So let's talk about England here today.
Rise of the Pope 2, Rise of England.
This is the rise of England. So we talked about the Pope earlier. Now we're going to talk about England. And that video helped give us a little bit of the background as far as the battle for control over England. We're going to talk about some of those characters here in just a few moments. So, well, we'll let you decide here as we talk through it. Which one do you think? So the Battle of Hastings is an extremely famous battle in English history. And the reason why is due to the fact that it was going to determine who had the authority and who had the power over the English people. So there are a couple characters involved here. We have Edward the Confessor. He was king of the Anglo-Saxon people. Now, the Anglo-Saxon people are the people that have now moved into England, and they have come over from parts of Europe and have settled here. There is some diversity, but for the most part, they're Anglo-Saxon. Many of us get our heritage from there as well. And we have Edward the Confessor as a king there. He dies without a direct heir to the throne. That's always a problem. If you don't have a son or a direct person to be able to hand the throne down to, then there's a lot of fighting and arguing over who should be the next king. And of course, that's exactly what happens here. Very quickly to claim the throne was William, who was Duke of Normandy. He was a cousin to Edward the Confessor. And he steps up and he says, hey, I'll be king. I am probably the closest blood relative, and I should most likely be that guy. However, the nobility. Now, who are the nobility of England? Not the knights, but the landowners. Yeah, the landowners, the lords. These would be people that would have a lot of power and influence. They did not like William, and so they rejected William, the Duke of Normandy, as their king. And so instead, they preferred Harold, who is Earl of Wessex. It's one of those British titles that was granted to him. Had to do with the land that he held. So the nobility rejects William, and they want Harold to be their king. So they elect him, and they say, hey, Harold, we're going to give you the throne. Even though you have no claim to it, you have no blood relative here, we like you better than we like William, and so, Harold, you are our new king. Congratulations. Of course, this is not going to go well with William, and so we have a battle between the two. Both of them want claim to the throne. They both want to be king. In their fighting, Harold dies in battle. And in that battle, the Anglo-Saxons are defeated. And because the fact that Harold dies and his army is defeated, that means William now has claim to the throne, even though most of the people of England don't support him. But because his army was stronger, because he won the battle, he gets to be king. Chance? He should have been, yes.
Whereas, so I mean, it really didn't make a difference because, let's say he lost, but he still would have had it even if the other guy didn't show up or said anything because he was blood related.
True, but it's like the people who threatened to leave the United States when Donald Trump became president.
They never did.
They never did, no. But
good for you.
they wanted to. They said, well, I'm going to leave. Well, that was kind of how the people reacted when they found out that William was going to be their king, that they weren't going to respect him. So it led to a battle, it led to a war. Yeah.
So in this case, if there hadn't been a war and they hadn't selected Harold, but they didn't want him to rule, if they didn't listen to him, he would technically still have power, but would he really have power over the people if they didn't listen to him?
He could have been like a do-nothing king, perhaps. That's a possibility, yeah. Sure. So, William now, because of his victory over Harold, he becomes known as the Conqueror, and he takes over all of England. He now has control over all of those lords and all of those nobility that did not want him in power. Because he won this battle, he now gets to tell them what to do. Pretty nice takeover. Now, William wants to know exactly who all is part of his kingdom. He wants to know how many people he has. He wants to be able to account for them. And so he puts together the Domesday Book. And this is an official census of all the people, land, territory that he now has under his control. And this is a famous British book that, or document that helps them understand more about history and who all was there. Now, to his credit, William was, to some extent, humble enough to ask for help. And he knew that he could not govern all these people by himself. He knew that he did not have the support of everybody around him. So he decided to bring in a group of people he called the Curia Regis, or the Great Council. And he decided that he was going to make nice with all of his nobility and some of the vassals that were part of the kingdom. And he wanted them to come in to offer advice to him. Because of the fact that William was not a man of the people, because of the fact that most people did not want William there, he said, I tell you what, I know I'm your king, I know I'm not your first choice, but come in and give me advice. How do you want me to rule you? How do you want me to be as your king? This is a really smart move. Because now the people felt like they had a say in their government. They felt like they had a influence on the king's decisions. Even if the king did not do what they recommended, at least they had an opportunity to talk to the king. So Curia Regis was an extremely important step in the direction of self-government or self-rule in English history. This is kind of where we get the idea of a cabinet for the President of the United States, was this type of idea here. Yes, there were other kings that did that. Not too many before him that I'm aware of, but other kings followed him, did do a similar type of idea. So as we pass down a couple of generations, Henry II is the great-grandson of William. And unfortunately, the royal line of William the Conqueror just it dies out, and Henry here is the great grandson. He is the closest relative to the throne, but he is kind of removed by marriage away from England and the throne there of William the Conqueror. He's also French. Now, what do we know about the French and the British? They do not get along at all. Now, some have pointed to this as part of the reason why. This event here, the Battle of the Throne over Henry and his family. So, Henry was the great-grandson. He was a Frenchman. He had more territory outside of England than what he had inside of England. He really did not know much about English history. He did not know much about the people there. And he himself provoked a rivalry between the two, between France and England. He was technically the king, but he lived in France. He didn't relate to the people, and he just brought a huge amount of bitterness between the two groups of people. And so he helped to establish something called common law. Now, common law was the just lost my note on that one. Yeah, where am I at? There it is. So it's a set of royal laws that are going to apply to all the people, not just the feudal lords. So it's going to apply to both people of France, the people of England.
So William, he split his kingdom too, since it was technically
No, so this is a great-grandson. He had at some point moved away. He had lived in France. He had kind of gone to live with his family in France. Well, by the time that they called him to be king, he was more French than he was English. So when he becomes the only blood relative, and they say, "Hey, you're king now," he's like, "Yeah, whatever. I got more land in France. I'd rather be in France." But well, no, he actually does some things. Like the common law here was a really important step because instead of having different laws for each feudal lord, now we have one common law that applies to everybody in his kingdom. He found that it was easier to rule if everybody was under the same laws.
So it's like a federal law.
Yeah, like a federal law. And he puts that in place so that now everybody plays by the same rules. Could you imagine how confusing that would be if every teacher was allowed to write their own handbook for the school?
I
No.
would.
So I realize that every teacher has their own little unique things that they put in their classroom, but we are all under the same general rules. But if it were way different in every classroom, and that's kind of what he was facing here, so that's why common law is so important. Now, we come back on Thursday. Please review through your notes. Plan to have a quiz over notes we took today. And keep up on that. I have assigned